So Andrew is going to be joining us. There he is. And he will be telling us how to make a plan for ourselves to make sure we can do the most good between now and Election Day. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Andrew. So a lot of you already know Andrew. He doesn't need a lot of explanation, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about Andrew and what he's done. He's the field director and strategist for Flip the West, and he's also been a congressional staffer and campaign manager for the last 10 years. He's recruited, trained, and managed over 1,300 operatives in congressional, gubernatorial, and presidential campaigns. And during the 2018 midterms, Andrew and Flip the West were instrumental in managing the statewide field programs, 14 paid staff, and 5,000 volunteers that reached over 1.5 million voters, focusing on the 7 Republican congressional incumbents in California that were defeated. So it was very exciting to have Andrew here. In 2014, Andrew was the campaign manager for Congressman John Garamendi in California's 3rd District, and he built a field operation that reached over 1 million voters in 6 months. He began his work with Garamendi when he was the lieutenant governor in 2008 as the deputy finance director for his gubernatorial campaign. And then he later joined AmeriCorps Vista, which is a great program, and spearheaded the anti-poverty and community development programs in underserved areas. Andrew brings a ton of political experience to campaigns and private sector best practices, from managing a commercial real estate brokerage, helping build affordable housing and zero net energy products, and also spearheading business development for biotech companies. He's the managing director for Spofford and Lynch. It's a consulting firm that specializes in data mining, communication, and battleground campaigns. And he's a certified project manager from Stanford University and a proud UCD alumni. Andrew's currently providing training on relational organizing and deep canvassing as a response to the challenges in traditional organizing during the pandemic. And he manages the Flip the West field operations, which now has reached over 2 million voters in key battleground states, important to flipping the Senate in 2020. So without further ado, please take it away, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Danessa. So as we get started, we want you to think, as the slide presentation gets ready, 2 hats that you could be wearing. One hat is you are here as an activist, as a volunteer activist, and we're going to talk about why we want you, why we need you as a super volunteer. And second is you're here as a group leader. And so there's 2 different types of plans. One type of plan as you just as an activist, you as an individual, and second is going to be you as a group leader, if that is the case. But the thing is, if you are a group leader, there are 2 different types of plans that you could do. Again, a plan for yourself and also a plan for your group. With that in mind, Danessa, I think yes, the slides, if we can get started with the presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, so again, before beginning, I want to thank Danessa Atiles for joining us from National Indivisible Team. She's the West Coast Senior Regional Organizer and one of our main partners for Flip the West. Thank you, Danessa. Okay, so quick disclaimer. These slides, there's a lot of text. So I know some of you are going to be upset. There's like way too much text, but this is like consolidating 90 to 100 slides into 30 slides for you. Special presentation. This is fresh presentation for you. We're going to move fast and all the slides will be public. So if you don't write down the notes, just no worries. We're going to be able to send it to you. Okay, let's get going. All right. So as mentioned, in less than 100 days, there are a lot of things that need to happen as grassroots leaders, as activists, as group leaders. I'm going to talk about 6 different things that are happening concurrently, right? Well, I would say phases. Like phase 1, we're still doing voter deficit reduction, right? Either registering new Democrats or reaching out to low propensity Democrats or talking to swing voters, right? Then we're doing organizational development. We're doing volunteer recruitment, retention. Right now is a perfect time for leadership development, especially before we kick off to the final 100 days. Third is going to be implementing relational organizing, or at least preparing for it if you are planning to incorporating relational organizing programs. Then phase 2, we're talking about GOTV. We're also talking about now organization deployment and incorporating some of these advanced voter and volunteer engagement strategies due to relational organizing. The reality is for these battleground states, all 6 are happening simultaneously. Next slide. So the punchline is, with so much happening all at once, it is so important for you as leaders to have clarity. And to have clarity, we're going to talk about writing a plan. By the end of this workshop, we want every one of you to have had a Google Doc created and start typing up your own plan. But step 1 of the plan is going to be making some decisions. There are 4 different types of decisions you can make on your priorities. Many of you already made these decisions, so you're already past step 1, so you're good to go. But for the folks who haven't made decisions, now the 100-day mark is the time to make the decisions. First, you kind of want to decide, what kind of campaigns am I going to work on? Am I going to try to focus on the presidential, the US Senate, the House, or a local one? What kind of programs am I going to do? Am I going to do phone banking, text banking, postcarding, or relational organizing, which again takes a little bit more effort training? What kind of tactics am I going to do? Am I going to do traditional tactics, or am I going to do advanced voter engagement, advanced volunteer engagement? And then what kind of roles am I willing to take in 2020? Am I just a normal volunteer? We're going to be asking for everyone here to be a super volunteer, a super activist, right? Or am I going to be a group leader? Am I going to play a leadership role in my group? And so what we recommend is step 1, think about what decisions that you are going to make based upon what are your priorities, and then write a personal mission statement. If that could be on the top of your personal plan, is your personal mission statement the next 100 days. And the more clear, right, the more specific, the more concrete, the more metric driven your mission statement is, the more motivational it'll be for you. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to make the case for the first decision you should make for everybody here. We have 200 people here. The first decision you should make is to join Flip the West in prioritizing flipping the US Senate. Why flipping the US Senate? 2 reasons. Number 1, it is this year, in 2020, one of the most viable opportunities to flip the US Senate. In 2018, we had to flip 24 House seats. In 2020, there's 35 Senate seats up for grabs, 23 Republican Senate seats up for grabs. All we need, including Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lindsey Graham, but all we need to do is flip 4. All we need to do is flip 4. And second, when we think about what's a moral imperative in 2020, since the Democrats took the House in 2018, the Democratic House, through Speaker Pelosi's leadership, passed over 460 bills. 460 bills, election security, we're talking about access to healthcare, we're talking about environmental protection, all being blocked by Mitch McConnell. All Mitch McConnell has been doing is rubber stamping judges, 200 judges. Next slide, please. So what's our strategy? Our strategy is to focus on the West. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, the states in the West very much mirror the electoral demographics of California, especially the congressional districts in California that flipped in the midterms. What are we talking about? Arizona, 1.3 million Latinx voters, right? That's like 30% of the voting population. Texas, 5.7 million Latinx voters. That's like, in Southern Texas, that's 60% of the voting demographic. Colorado, that's a significant Latinx population as well. But all of these states, an important demographic is the independent voters, which polling data and our early field results are saying a majority are not going to be voting for Donald Trump, which provides an opening. If they're not voting Republican for president, would they commit to not voting Republican for US Senate? And the second reason is these states have what we call an up and down ballot implication. Up ballot implication in the sense that if they lose a state like Arizona with 11 electoral college votes, Donald Trump is in trouble. But also a state like Arizona, where the state legislature has been controlled by the Republicans for 30 years, all they need to do in 2020 is flip 3 legislative district seats. They could take control. That's very exciting because there's dozens of legislative district seats up for grabs, 5 that are in striking distance. Next, please. Thank you. So what's our pathway to victory? So again, all we need to do is flip 4 states, and then we can take back the U.S. Senate, retire Mitch McConnell. We're going to do a past voter deficit modeling. So what do I mean? It means we're going to look at the past voter deficit of these 4 states, of the 4 states we need to flip the U.S. Senate, and see what we lost by to set goals for the future. So, for example, in Colorado, the last time Cory Gardner, the current senator, defeated the Democrat, he won by 39,000 votes. So we're going to use that as a baseline, right? That's the voter deficit there. In Montana, the current Republican senator, Steve Daines, won by 65,000 votes. In Arizona, we're going to use a different baseline that's a little bit more comparable at 67,000 votes. In Iowa, Joni Ernst defeated Bruce Braley by 94,000 votes. If we add that all up, that is about 250,000 votes. We're talking about 267,000 votes. If we can close that gap, what we're saying is we could potentially flip the U.S. Senate. And so that we're going to use as our baseline for our pathway to victory goal. Thank you. I'll do this for next slide, please. Okay, so the next step, after you make a decision on your priorities, next you need to do a diagnostic on your capacity. So what do I mean? You need to have clarity of what you're willing to do, what you're capable of doing, not even what you want to do, but what you can do, right? How many hours can you commit, right, as an activist from now until election day? How many weeks are you willing to commit? Are you willing to commit all 13 weeks? Are you willing to activate your own personal sphere? And we're going to talk about that because that's important for relational organizing. Are you willing to host action events? Are you willing to meaning host your own phone bank parties? Are you willing to email to your own personal list, right? How often are you willing to email? So we're going to do a sample activist, Ruth. She's willing to do 4 hours a week. That's about 2 phone banks a week for 10 weeks. Willing to activate her sphere, willing to host her own postcard party, 5 of them, and willing to send 5 email blasts to her 100 email listserv. So what we're saying is right there, Ruth Shelby, she's now at reaching about 1,000 to 2,500 voters. What we're asking for each activist, everyone here, is for you by the end of election day in 100 days, can you help us reach 1,000 voters? If each of us can reach 1,000 voters, remember the voter deficit to flipping the Senate was less than 250,000. And if each one of us just on this call can reach 1,000 voters, that's 230,000 votes. That's already a voter deficit. Next slide, please. So next is going to be if you're a group leader. So you want to do a diagnostic for your group as well. Same questions, a little bit more detailed. And again, I'm going to share these slides with you so you can go through these questions in more detail. But the main question is how many active members, not just members, but active members, volunteers that are pledged to phone bank, to postcard this election cycle, right? How many of them are willing to take ownership? I call them the team leaders or event leaders, meaning every day on Friday, the Zoom room phone bank, Ruth has it under control, right? How many of those folks do you have? Because they're important to grow. So we have a similar situation, a breakdown of example group where they have 400 members, but actually it's only 15 active members, right? But they have 20 folks pledged for 2020. They have about 85 emails, 2 virtual action events per week. So I'm not going to read all of this, but what we're asking for is for each group to commit to doing 10,000 voters by the end, which is really 10 super activists per each super group. I mean, each group. And this 10,000 is great because there's a lot of indivisible groups in Northern California that have pledged to me that they're going to do pledge to flip the West, that we're going to work together to do 10,000. And again, if we can have 10,000 for each group, that means we just need 26 groups to help us close the voter deficit to flip the U.S. Senate. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what's our next request? Our next request is for group leaders and activists to consider two-way voter contact. So two-way voter contact is based on this concept of field, first of all. I mean, there's 7 different kinds of persuasions that consultants do. The bottom 4 are what we call field, but it's really the bottom 3 that's two-way voter contact. Why is two-way voter contact or person-to-person persuasion so important? It's because, number one, it's measurable. like when they get a postcard or when they get a mail piece or when they get a TV ad, we have no idea if they've received it. We have no idea if they were moved by it or if they were convinced by it. We have no idea. Whereas a phone call or a text, right, or an email, yes, I support the Dem, or I'm undecided. Why are you undecided? And so future targeting, we could, future outreach, we could be micro-targeted. Second, it's more memorable. Social psychologists say when you are able to share your personal story, there's an emotional connection, even subconscious, where they see the ballot, they think of you and your voice, they hear it in the back of their mind. Number two, it's more meaningful because you're not just trying to message to them. It's not just selling the message points. You are building a relationship. You're building a relationship on behalf of the campaign, and you're building a relationship on behalf of our movement that we must take a stand against Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell and his agenda driven on corruption, authoritarianism, and inequality. And lastly, every time you talk to a voter and they say, yes, I'm going to vote Dem, you can also ask if they're going to be willing to volunteer, even just one day. Right now, our volunteer recruitment rate from cold phone calls is unprecedented. We're at 20%. 20% of people that we're calling Democrats, even mid-propensity, low propensity, saying, I'll volunteer one day. But here's the thing. Person-to-person, two-way voter contact is way more energy intensive, way more time intensive, way more resource intensive, right? To put a postcard program together or a mail piece or a TV ad, boom, 1 week, done. To put together a phone banking program, I mean, it takes weeks and months of recruiting, training, retaining, deploying, everybody quitting, so re-recruiting, training, right? Next slide, please. And so, but one of the key pieces, again, it's measurable. So what do I mean that it's measurable? So let's look at the pathway to victory again. Again, to flip the US Senate, the 4 states, the pathway to victory is 250,000, 267,000 votes we need to close. So if we can do field math here, so what we're saying is if each volunteer can make about 50 phone calls per volunteer shift, at 9% contact rate, anywhere from 69 to 72% conversion rate, it means every volunteer who makes a phone call with us is 3 conversions, minus 3 from the 267,000. If we were to then project that out through field calculations, what we're saying is if we can recruit 3,900 volunteers at 50 calls each, at 1 phone bank a week, just 1 phone bank a week, we're talking about 2.8 million phone calls. With our intern program, that's going to be about 4 million phone calls. And if we can do 4 million phone calls, which actually counts to about 3,000 phone bank parties, we have closed the voter deficit. Bye-bye, Mitch McConnell. Next slide, please. And so how are we going to close this 4 million voter voter contact goal? Our next is what we're calling the Virtual Action Center. Many of you may make phone calls on yourself, but what we're saying is, yeah, we thank you for that, but we would welcome you to join our Zoom rooms. Many of the groups have their own Zoom rooms. The Zoom rooms really make a difference because it helps provide accountability, a sense of community, and it helps push each other, right? And so we're hoping that if you're unaffiliated with any group, you could still join any of our Zoom rooms. But if you're a grassroots group and you'd like to partner, right? We recommend partnering with us or some of the other groups to co-host joint Zoom rooms. We do that with Indivisible a lot. We have joint Zoom rooms with Indivisibles, and it's great. Now we have a college Zoom room where it's just college students in the same Zoom room or high school students in the same Zoom room. And we have Zoom rooms dedicated to our battleground states in Arizona, Colorado, in Montana, and Iowa. And then lastly, we have even text Zoom rooms. Next slide, please. So at this point, if you have questions and if you wanted to get assistance hosting your own Zoom rooms, you haven't done a Virtual Action Center event yet, but you'd like assistance, please join the FlipForce partnership. It's non-exclusive partnership, but we will help support, provide back-end support, give access to data for phone banking, postcarding data, phone bank data. We'll provide free workshops, training, additional consulting, and provide help with your own plan. I think I'm going to ask Danessa if she could put the link for you to sign up to be a FlipForce partner, and we can continue to assist you. Okay, so with that, my favorite topic is relational organizing. We believe this is going to be such an important component in 2020. And I'm going to demystify what relational organizing means. It really just means tapping into our personal relationships. And there's two purposes of why you're going to do that. Number one is to reach more voters. And number two is to recruit more volunteers. That's it, right? Some people try to complicate it. It's simple. I'm going to reach into my own relationships to either recruit more volunteers or to reach more voters. And why is this important? Because case studies say that relational organizing is the most effective way of persuading and reaching voters or recruiting volunteers. Okay, great. But relational organizing requires extra effort. Number one, you have to agree to activate your personal sphere. A lot of you, when you're making cold calls, there's nothing to lose. But when you have to activate your own friends, your family, some people feel uncomfortable with that. But that's what we're asking, right? If it was 2018, we could have gone away with no personal sphere activation. 2020, during the pandemic, this is what we're saying we need to do. We need to all be willing to activate our personal sphere, right? Second, we need to be willing to make the higher level ask. Just saying, you're going to support Dems? Thank you, bye. Not good enough. You're going to support Dems? Can I count on you to be a vote tripler? Can I count on you for a virtual lawn sign? Can I count on you for early vote pledge? Can I count on you to volunteer? We need to be willing to make the higher level ask. And third, what does that mean? It means we need additional confidence in our knowledge and more training and more practice. So my next pledge is for each one of you to write out your personal story of why you're getting involved. And if you were to write an email to your own friends and family of why I'm involved in 2020, how you would share your story, because I guarantee you it's a little bit different than just telling strangers. So this is the personal story, not just for strangers, but this is a personal story for your own friends and family. Next slide, please. Great. And why is relational organizing program? I already mentioned it earlier. There's limited canvassing, and which at the end of the day, we believe we're going to reach less voters because, again, there's limited phone numbers. Everybody's going to be calling the same phone numbers. We're going to increase voter fatigue. Second, no house parties. So we're not going to be able to recruit as many brand new activists. And third, we've just lost momentum in general. Since March, progressive grassroots activists lost significant momentum compared to what we were at in 2018. If you want the full study and the full paper, there's a link here on a white paper that was written about all of the takeaways from the pandemic and what we need to do to change, to pivot. Next slide, please. So vote tripling is very simple concept. This is one of the relational organizing programs that we recommend everyone to do to recruit more to reach more voters. Every time on the phone, and this is why two-way voter contact is important, because you can't do vote tripling with postcarding. Postcarding, you're not going to be able to do vote tripling. When you're talking to someone on the phone and they're like, yes, I will vote Democrat. I will vote for Mark Kelly. Yes, I will vote for Hickenlooper. Yes, I will vote for Teresa Greenfield. Be like, can you remind 3 more friends to also vote for Mark Kelly, for the Democrat? What are their first names? Because social psychologists say when you vocalize something, the realization rate increases. Next slide, please. But relational organizing requires additional tracking. Even if but this is the beauty of it. You could be calling with Flip the West, the Democratic Party, Indivisible, Swing, any of the groups, right? You just need to create your own spreadsheet, right? Your own spreadsheet. Every voter you call, and they're like, yeah, I'm down to be a vote tripler. What are 3 additional names? And you just write down their names. And then your job is to send them a text message when absentee ballots drop, reminding them, hey, these are the 3 folks that you said you were going to remind. Can you confirm that you reminded them? Boom, vote tripling. Second, adopt the voter. Adopt the voter means every voter that you talk to and they're like, yes, I'm down to vote Dem. Can I follow up with you? Can I get your email? I'd love to email you and just share with you a little bit more information. Can I get your cell phone? I'd love to follow up with you. It's really about getting their consent for follow-up. And this is a key component to deep canvassing. It's about continuity to accelerate building trust. Next slide, please. So I'm going to move it even faster. So, okay, so vote tripling, again, you're going to just reach 3 times more voters and account for. So that's the punchline on this slide. Next slide. And the pledge is everybody, please do vote tripling. It means everybody doing phone banking, add the vote tripling pledge. It's one more question. And it doesn't matter if the script has it or not, just add it. Just add it, right? Thank you. Next slide, please. So now is incorporating relational organizing to recruit more volunteers, right? And the most important program is based on the Obama campaign's neighborhood team leader, which means, and we call it virtual team leader. It means you're not going to just do postcarding for us. You're going to host your own postcard party, inviting your personal friends. You're not going to just host a phone bank. You're not going to just phone bank for us. You're going to host your own virtual phone bank party, inviting your friends and family, right? If you can do that, immediately you have created a net growth where now you're recruiting volunteers that the campaign would have never been able to reach. And that is so important. And the moment you're able to recruit a virtual team leader who's able to handle the logistics of an event, recruit the people, send the email out, make sure everybody is trained, and make sure someone's quality control. And let's say Ruth is the team leader for Friday, for every Friday, the phone bank or postcard event. That's like manna from heaven. Like, it's amazing because that's how you grow as a grassroots group. Next slide, please. So how do we do this? If you want to be a virtual team leader, here are 7 steps for you to take today, right? So that you're not just phone banking, you're going to host your own phone bank party. First is build your database. Have an Excel sheet, list the name of 20 people that you're going to potentially invite. Then send them a personal email, right? With your personal story of why you're doing this. Then make RSVP phone calls, send them a reminder email, then have an agenda. It's really good to have an agenda of the virtual event party, even if the agenda is short. Next, host the actual party. Make it fun. Have everybody bring a drink of choice, right? A mocktail or something. And then make sure you have a game plan for follow-ups, for follow-up virtual action parties. Thank you. Next slide. This is an important piece for anyone who's in group leadership. Consolidate your database for the final 100 days. As activists, it's so important. Really, one of your most important skills and one of your most important tools is your database. As an organizer, the value of an organizer is how strong your database is. So consolidate all of the emails that you have, put it in order. We call it score it, right? 1 out of 5, the likeliness of them phone banking with you. 0, if they're never going to phone bank. 5, they're going to phone bank. Then what's their higher level ask? Right? If you have any past track history, what issues do they care about? Right? And then so scoring and improving this database and consolidating it between your leadership, especially for the final 100 days, very useful. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, so the 8th recommendation, we're almost there, is for each, now that we have done a lot of diagnostic and a lot of preparation, now we're gonna start setting goals, right? And we're asking for you to not set basic goals, but set super goals, superhero goals. Why? Because during the pandemic, we need your help. And to defeat Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell, we need each one of us to dig even, to go even deeper than ever before. So when we talk to a voter, oh yeah, I'm a Dem voter, that's not enough. We need you to be a super voter, right? Even if you're not gonna be a volunteer, we need you to be a super voter. We need you to do the virtual lawn sign, which is the Facebook Mark Kelly post, which is the vote tripling pledge, early voting pledge, consent for me to follow up with you in my Adopt the Voter program, for you to participate in our webinar, or if you're a volunteer, for you to be a super volunteer, doing phone banking or text banking or emails, doing voter persuasion, because in many of the battleground states, there's more registered Republicans, so we need to convince some Republicans and independent voters. We need to upsell voters every time we talk to them. We need to take ownership of every voter we talk to in the Adopt the Voter program. We need to want to do more training. Every training that's available, we want, as a super volunteer, we bring on the training, right? We need to join other small groups, right, for all of our grassroots organizations. And if you're a group, we want you to be a super group, meaning set a field plan, write out a field plan that's ambitious, and have your group on board and try to introduce relational organizing. Next slide, please. A key point here is one piece of the plan is plan out your budget. And your budget is your time, right? The more you can plan time, have time to do electoral action, actually speak to voters yourself, have time, because you need to lead by example. than have time to deal with volunteer issues and org issues and have time and even budget some money. Because the thing is, if you don't budget in advance for the final 100 days, you may get resentful when you overspend your time and you may burn out. Planning a budget is one of the most proactive ways to prevent burnout. And that's my next pledge here. Next slide, please. Okay, now is the time for you to set the goals, right? This is the punchline. We're like, well, okay, the plan, 100 days. In 100 days, how many phone banks are you going to do? And I think I'm going to ask Danessa to ask that question, or maybe we're not going to do the poll. You could just write it in. Each one of you, there's 230 people on this. How many phone bank events are you going to do from now until election day, right? One per week. So there's 14 weeks. Can you do one per week? That means you're going to do 14. And if you do 14 at 50 calls each, that's 700 calls, right? So we have 114. Thank you, Lynn, right? And same, so we're saying one per week for a normal volunteer. For a super volunteer, we're hoping that you could do two per week, right? And that's 1,400 voters that you're going to be able to reach. And then how many net volunteers are you willing to recruit from your own sphere, right? Why is setting a voter contact goal important? This is so important because we don't have a campaign office. So none of us are like holding each other accountable. That's why each one of us need to hold ourselves accountable. And if you could say, I'm going to reach 1,000 voters, right? Or 700 voters, which means one phone bank a week. And that's my goal. I'm going to do that no matter what. That kind of conviction and resolve will help us win on 2020. Last slide, please. Okay. Yes. So what you see here is a total review of what we covered. And what you're realizing is step 1 to 8 was really understanding the framework of the decision that you want to make. Then it's really the last 3 points that are where you come up with your 100-day plan. So the point I'm trying to make is before you just jump into your plan, do a lot of analysis. Do what we call a SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Be realistic, be practical, be feasible, but also set goals that are reaching and that can help us build the movement to flip the US Senate and defeat Donald Trump. We Flip the West, we actually have a lot more presentations. This is one of 7 additional presentations. So we have 8 presentations, this one's special for Training to Win, but we have 7 different presentations that we can provide you or your group. All we ask is for you to join the Flip Force Network. Again, it's totally free and totally non-exclusive, and you get a lot of professional consulting support. I think Danessa dropped the link for you to sign up for Flip Force. Again, we request for you to join Flip Force. So for the final 100 days, you're not alone. You can have a staff person dedicated to your group supporting you.
Yeah, Nina and Sophia have dropped that link multiple times. We'll drop it one more time.
Thank you.
Taz has a question. He says it would be really helpful to have a worksheet that we can send our members and volunteers for them to fill out for the volunteer action. That way we can assign accountability buddies. Do you have something like that we can provide in a follow-up?
We do. I was so close to getting it ready today, but it wasn't ready for prime time because I needed to get approval from a couple of people before I just shared that to the world. But it is very close to happening, and you are right on point. An accountability sheet is going to be very simple. I mean, very good. And it's really easy. It's just 3 questions. How many hours are you willing to commit per week? And how many weeks are you willing to commit, right, for the remainder of the election? Actually, I made it more complicated. How many phone bank events are you willing to do from now until election day? If they can just be honest with that, be like, here's what I'm willing to do, like on a very conservative basis, here's what I'm doing as a reach goal, right? That could already be helpful. Everything else we can do, field projections after the fact.
And Jennifer wants to know, how do you get people to stay on with you? What segues have you found to be the most effective in getting a person to talk to you when you are calling?
That is a very good question. So the secret for me in our call center is the first 30 seconds is key. In the first 30 seconds, if you can get past it, then you're golden. Most people get hung up in the first 30 seconds. And the number one thing is to master the 3 pivots. Pivot number 1, I don't have time for this. Most people that are too respectful as volunteers, oh, okay, thank you. No, I don't have time. I'm not going to take much time. I'm going to take 30 seconds, right? You're going to take more than 30 seconds. But when you say that, they're like, all right, fine, whatever, right? So that's pivot 1. I don't know how I feel about this. Be like, then pivot. Do you have any questions I can answer? So I guess what I'm trying to say right now is anytime that people are trying to hang up on you, if you can practice the pivot in advance and practice it a couple times, you'll be confident. And most of the times, the voter will give you the benefit of the doubt. Because again, we're not selling them anything. We're just promoting democracy. This is a public service announcement in many ways. Thank you for that question.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Jean is asking, a lot of her people are postcarding and less phone and text banking. Or do you have some numbers to share about why phone and text banking are more important for people to do, and how do you get people to do that?
Okay, so the reason why postcarding, I love postcard. I am a postcard evangelist, right? I am all about postcarding, but right now we don't have that. Postcarding was great in 2018 when we had robust door-to-door, right? When we were canvassing every single door in like these congressional districts in California. Right now we have no door-to-door. With no door-to-door, no person-to-person, right? No face-to-face. The only thing we have left is phone banking, right? Is it the best? No, but it's the only thing we got. And I'll tell you, there are multiple case studies. I'll share 7 different case studies that share why person-to-person is the most effective way of communicating and persuading a voter. And postcards are great, especially as GOTV reminders. But if we're going to flip battleground states where there's more Republicans or independent voters, we need to have person-to-person conversations. And the only way we have left is phone banking. Is it the best? No, but we need it. And that's why in 2020, we're asking each of you to dig deeper, to consider phone banking, even though it's like phone banking to many feels like manual labor. I know. Like even when I phone bank, call time, it's just painful, but it's the cost to winning in 2020.
Well, I personally love phone banking. I love talking to people. I like to play phone banking bingo with how many people I can get to hang up on me or stay. So we're wrapping up right now. This is just a reminder to everybody that the Join the Flip Force is in the chat, as well as 2 phone banks. There's a phone bank today calling into Arizona with Flip the West. And then there is a phone and text bank party with all the indivisible National West Coast staff. And you hopefully calling into Georgia and texting voters in Texas. And can we just close out with what is your third pivot? Because a lot of people are asking about that. So if we're calling today, the voters in Georgia and Arizona, what is the third pivot? You mentioned there were 3 and you only gave us 2.
Yeah, so the third pivot is, can I find more like, oh, I need more time to think about it, or I'm undecided, or I'm going to vote against I'm not voting Democrat, right? So I'm voting Republican, right? A lot of people say, oh, okay, thank you, bye, right? We can't, we need some Republican votes. So do you mind if I ask why you're voting Republican? That's the pivot. Do you mind if I ask why? Right? A lot of people don't have the courage to just be like, why are you voting Republican? But the moment you ask them why you're voting Republican, they have to start justifying Donald Trump's behavior. And then they catch themselves in a web of complicated logic that's actually flawed. And so then your case, your messaging point seems way more logical.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you, everybody here. Over 200 people participated and talked to us in the chat. It was a really meaningful experience. And now we're going to transition into the next set of sessions. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Danessa, and the Indivisible team so much for our partnership. We look forward to working with you in the final 100 days. And thank you, everyone, all of the activist leaders, superhero activists working with us to pedal to the metal until November 3rd.
Thanks, Andrew. Bye, everyone.